Ugh.
Oh my
Yes.
All over the laptop.
Yeah, the laptop is in the splash zone, but
Cheers.
I used to have a
Salud.
podcast. The last claws. I'm serious. This is the last claw. These are the last claws in Los Angeles.
If we walk down to the Vons, I guarantee you we'll find some.
You know I'm gonna go out to that Vons after because these are the last claws. You had a claw?
It's great. I've never had a claw.
I haven't had a sip of it yet. I'm just basking in it.
Can't
It's
believe
great.
you're not putting this into content. Man's first claw.
Well, that's what we're doing right now. The show's live. We started with that whole claw toast right here. So.
Man's first claw.
Go claw!
Oh boy. Yeah.
Want everybody to hear that and like just
White
taste
claw
that.
ASMR.
Oh God! And the thing is, we're just going way too deep down the claw hole right now.
Claw.
Allie Moore, welcome on the bus.
Thank
No,
you.
we're not on the bus. It's bus driver experience. Like you can't say the old show. I mean, or else that just sounds. Can't do that. That's branding, marketing. But I'm happy to have you on.
Thank you. I am happy to be on.
Yeah, we just got out of the kitchen and we had our other friend Allie, and we were eating a lot of bugs.
Yes.
Over in your kitchen over there. Tarantulas, various forms of crickets, and powders. We didn't eat live crickets, did we? No, not live, but I'm saying we didn't have any whole crickets, or we did in the bowl.
You did in the bowl. You, in fact, ate the entire bowl.
Do you have any of those things that we did eat just now? Or
I mean,
an example of a cricket so people can
crickets?
see.
yeah.
But also make sure you go check out that video. Ooh.
Which camera am I pointing that at? All of
Whichever
them.
one, yeah.
Ooh.
So yeah, we just ate a bunch of these, and I know you're working really hard in bug advocacy, we'll call it.
Yeah.
Trying to bring these things not just to the mainstream or to popular culture, but you're trying to make them taste good, and you're trying to make, I wouldn't say taste good, but people have different associations, or they have different stigmas, or they have different biases. Would that be the plural there?
Yeah.
Towards insects, and you are the one who's running around the world literally, and you're changing it. And I mean, before we go into that, just like, why bugs? I mean, you could have done claws like me. See, I'm a claw advocate, and I'm just like, people got to know about the claws.
You're doing great work, by the way.
I'm holding on this thing with two hands. It's the last claw. I wouldn't be this crazy about it if it wasn't the last claw. But yes, please go ahead. Why bugs? I mean, what is your thing about bugs?
All right, so first fact, I don't like live bugs. I will not kill the spider in the corner. You know that. So I like insects as a provocative way to open a dialogue about how what we eat impacts our bodies and the planet. It got started 2012, so many years ago, when I went to Mexico for a public health project, and they had these late night taco stands. I'll try anything once, and one of the things listed was taco de chapulín, and that means grasshopper taco. So ate that. It was delicious, and went home. It was almost Thanksgiving. I needed to prank my family. I was trying to Google how to buy bugs for human consumption. The industry wasn't a thing yet, so I had to use the phone and call people.
Did you have to use Bitcoin and the dark web to buy bugs back then?
No, but I did have to use the phone, which is something that becomes increasingly strangely terrifying for people. So I called cricket farmers, heard their mission, we are growing bugs for humans to eat because it's super nutritious, super sustainable, and yada yada. So that was how I got started. Blogging, to bug and wine pairings, to bug dinners, to getting to know everyone in the space and falling in love and trying to help them out now.
In love with bugs.
Yeah. Well, in love with the mission and just kind of the wackiness of the industry. It's endlessly amusing and fascinating.
What is the mission behind getting bugs into, food, into, mainstream culture? I mean, what's the point?
Yeah. So, again, I try to temper the extremism in my messaging sometimes, because it can seem like a bunch of crazy people who drank the same Kool-Aid and are on this crazy bug mission, which in some ways it is, in a good way. But the whole point is that our global population is growing. It's going to hit 10 billion by 2050, and our current food system is really unsustainable, and it's very complex. So it's hard to change that. Insects are super nutritious. They're super sustainable. They check a lot of boxes in terms of wanting to reduce the transportation cost of food, cost monetarily, but also on the environment, seasonality, forecastability, all these things. And insects are a solution for that. Even if people aren't eating them, they should be fed to livestock like chickens and fish, and they're not, or only recently are. Like in January of 2019, black soldier fly larvae and some insects were approved to be used in certain fish meal and chicken feed, which is just baffling because those animals eat bugs in the wild. They have better health outcomes with less antibiotics and use less natural resources to produce. So whole bunch of ways the insects impact the food system and feed system, and we're just trying to get people open to that idea.
Yeah, it seems like if you can get people to agree on one thing, it's cost. How can we save money and how can we make more money?
Yeah.
But I mean, besides that, where do I want to go with this? What is the point of having, trying to put bugs in there? Like, what's more sustainable? What isn't sustainable with our current food systems or, logistic systems? Yeah,
there's a lot. So, stats vary greatly depending on how and what you're raising, but on average, it's going to be somewhere around like 2,000 gallons of water to get a pound of beef from the farm to your table. And it's like 1 gallon of water to get a pound of crickets from the farm to your table. And people will go, oh, crickets are much smaller. Okay, it's like that joke of what's heavier, a pound of bowling balls or a pound of feathers? They're both a pound. Yeah. So yes, you need more crickets, but for much less input, you get a lot more output. In addition to water, they produce less greenhouse gases than traditional beef. They take less space. So when you're thinking about urban farming or space travel, like they're a really viable option. And they also are cold-blooded, so they have a better feed to body mass conversion ratio. So they take on crickets take about 12 times less feed to produce the same amount of body mass as like a cow would. So all that, ethics are a great reason too. If you've seen Food Inc. or anything on Netflix recently, like Cowgate, about the mistreatment of overcrowded livestock, insects are living their hypothetical best lives with all their cricket friends and get to live their full lives out, and then are put into a fridge where they're chilled and they fall asleep, and then moved into a freezer where they don't wake up. So
yeah, we live in this culture today that everybody is shocked, everybody's offended. So right away I'm thinking, carnivores, meat eaters, they're already heated. Well, listen, we can't get the same nutrients and we can't get the same stuff that we can't get from red meat. Because I know it's a big thing with vegans and vegetarians that, in red meat's one of the greatest sources of B12, as well as a lot of people get very deficient in iron because it's really hard to find those in other places. How does that compare with insects?
So again, it varies based on the bug. Something like a grub will be higher in the omega-3s, where a cricket will be higher in the B12s. But on the whole, insects are a complete superfood. So compared to beef, they actually have more protein in some cases. It's more bioavailable. They also have complete proteins. They're animals. So all 9 essential amino acids and the branch chains. If you have like 100 grams of crickets and 100 grams of beef, you might find that for a comparable amount of protein, you're getting more B12, more iron, more calcium, great amounts of phosphorus, magnesium, zinc, probiotics from the fiber and the chitin, and then a whole wealth of micronutrients and different vitamins. So they stand up really well.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I've heard the whole thing about protein and then having, more comparable protein when you put them side by side, serving size wise. But yeah, has anybody been testing this in terms of have any freak athletes been eating strictly bugs? And what would bugs be considered? Because, if I got to think about on the other side, are vegans and vegetarians, thinking that you are negatively impacting or, physically hurting or torturing or whatever deep, dark term those people's minds have. Those people, I said it.
Oh, my God.
How do they feel about this? What do they think about, switching over to insects and using this? Is it just about sustainability or is it more about virtue signaling for vegans?
So to address the first question, we have a lot of really great different companies reaching out to different athletes and having them try their product out. There are increasingly there's an increasing amount of reports coming out about the nutrition content and the bioavailability of insects, which is super cool. So you're going to see much more literature available on that soon that kind of proves out the points that we're making. But at the end of the day, like, by all means, keep eating meat. I still eat meat. I just think everything in moderation, and especially for places and people that have environments that can't support traditional livestock, like, insects are a great option. So we want to just cultivate that mindset, not a only bugs mindset.
Yeah.
For vegans, there is a community called Ento Vegan, and they get a lot of hate and a lot of love. It's a very polarizing question. I will never tell people what to think when their food decisions are being made, because it's something that can be very personal for vegans that are trying to do the least amount of harm possible, unless they're literally getting their vegetables from the farm to their table. If they're getting them at Vaughn's or like any grocery store, you have to get a huge variety of vegetables to get the amount of nutrition that you need in your day.
I think the big thing missing, though, is that most of those vegetables are just so lacking in nutrients these days because of the terrible biodiversity in soil itself. So a lot of that stuff doesn't get transferred over to the vegetables. So I know the big thing was when we had a carnivore, Sean Baker, doctor on the show, he was talking about, well, you know, just like anything, whether it's, you know, all these different plants or vegetables, or if I'm eating, you know, the entire part of a cow, I'm going to be getting all the nutrients that I technically need, and I can be getting those from an animal itself. And you're going to be getting, just with the terrible nutrients that are in plants and vegetables and fruits today, or the lacking of nutrients that are in there, it's actually healthier for me to get most of my vitamins and nutrients from red meat. So
that's where insects can help too. They're actually a whole other part of the story is their impact on soil health and biodiversity.
No, I think like you said, they're definitely in there. They're, you know, they're like cows, you know, they're passing on fertilizer to the land, making sure that there's something that they can continuously regenerate. I think that's the problem with crops. There's usually just one cycle of plants and the soil's getting destroyed. Yeah. And we've seen this with different droughts and famines, or even the Dust Bowl in the 1930s, when just all the topsoil of the land just dried out and got blown away. And people were out of, you know, food, they were out of land, jobs, you know, things that make our civilization. You know, what are we without the jobs? Jobs make everything. But yeah, it's interesting that these things can do that, but I think the huge problem is the stigma. You know, if you're going to tell someone, especially in another country, maybe that country, you know, doesn't have the availability of big farmland or, you know, livestock in order to farm it, to kill it, to eat it, that if you're not eating bugs on a daily, well, why are you making these people eat bugs? You know, do you think they're less than you? Do you think they're below you? So I think that's the stigma. You know, is that something that you're working on too? Just say like, hey, these things are good for everybody?
Yeah. That's why this originally caught my curiosity. It's like a really fun marketing equation, and it's kind of like sushi back in the 1960s, when that was considered barbaric and disgusting, and we had a lot of xenophobia at that time, and only poor people or foreign people eat raw fish. What the heck? And we're seeing a similar narrative now with insects. 2 billion people in the world eat them. By saying that that's an apocalypse food or disgusting, we're saying your cultural cuisine is so nasty to me that I would only consider eating it if the world was ending. And like, that's not awesome. Out here, I think we're making a real effort to not just market it as an emergency food. Like, insects, of course, are going to be great if the apocalypse hits. You know, if the zombie thing happens, come to my place. I have like 10 years worth of food in here, and it'll be shelf stable. But we want insects to be started at the top so that they can migrate anywhere. If you can get chefs beyond just Noma, which was ranked the top restaurant in the world for a couple of years, and they've made prolific use of insects for like 8 years or so.
Really?
Yeah.
And Noma's the one in
Copenhagen.
Yes. I've been to one of the top restaurants around Copenhagen, but I didn't make it to Noma. And I think everybody should go do one of those just insane dining experiences, because it's so much more than just, you know, going there and eating food. It's literally, when you go to those places, the production that goes into the 8 or 13 course meal that you take part in, it's literally being transplanted or disconnected to whatever you were thinking or doing before, and the world that they're able to bring you into is the only thing that matters at that time. And the things they can manipulate with, on your senses, whether it's on what you're going to be hearing about the food as well as what you're going to be tasting about the food. It's very, 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 they're artists. Yeah. It's amazing.
And that's exactly why it's like chefs are the gatekeepers of human preference. They set menus. And with that, though, they also have a responsibility. And we're seeing that happen more and more now, where chefs are aware that what they put on their menu determines their establishment's environmental footprint and their patrons' nutrition options for the evening. So that also comes with kind of a mentality where they're providing you with an artful experience. It can impact the way that you view the world. And we're hoping that chefs that have a real strong ability to communicate passion or flavor or whatever can use their menus to educate folks about this new ingredient.
How do chefs feel about it? Because you're talking about people like these very high-class restaurants have used them, but they've been using them for years. But how have they been using them? And like, how would that even look on a dish? Let's say, if it was, we're going to take the steak out of a nice dish. What goes in there now? We're talking about giant cockroach now? I mean...
Nope. Probably not cockroaches for a while. I learned that's one way to scare people, actually.
They're just...
Cockroaches...
They're just children.
Later. We need to rebrand that still. I think a good scorpion. Right now already in Oaxacan restaurants, we're seeing amazing like chapulín guacamole. Or
and we're seeing like an 8-ounce like scorpion like this big, like substitute for that steak?
No, not yet. I think that to start, right now what we're already seeing is like a restaurant in New York called Black Ant has a great, I think they serve grasshopper tacos, they have a grasshopper guac, and then they do black ants lining their margarita rims. I think that the cocktail masters are actually going to come into handy here. Like, people will do weird things with their cocktails. I think spirulina got a huge bump in their uptake by making these green drinks. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping for flaming scorpion shots. I want black ant rimmed. I want a grasshopper drink made with actual grasshoppers.
I think you said you have like grasshopper salt that you put on a rim of a margarita.
Yeah.
Let me see this. So we put grasshopper on the rim.
Oh yeah.
Wow. I mean, I'll drink it, but I mean, what's the difference on these? Can we pop these open now?
It's just blended grasshoppers for the flavor and then salt. Nothing novel. You wouldn't even know.
No, but grasshoppers have a unique taste. We've been over this in the back, in the aftertaste at the end. You can really, what is it that people taste on them, or is it just?
So the grasshoppers are a little more muted. The crickets kind of have this aftertaste, and it's probably from the omega-3s. It's like a subtle umami, slightly fishy flavor.
Wow, that is salty.
Pairs perfectly with a claw, I heard.
Am I the first?
Yeah, I actually would venture to say so.
Cricket salts and claws.
Yeah? Kind of?
I just ate a lot of salt, so.
Yeah. And then you have things like this, though. Like, I think we're going to see a lot of dietary, like special dietary movement with crickets. For example, they're gluten-free naturally. They're like really high in a bunch of nutrients. So you can have chips that are gluten-free and packed with healthy things. So hopefully they'll be taken up by the celiac community or kids. Kids are amazing. Kids are going to be the force for change for bugs, for sure. So it might take another generation. But in the meantime, we can just start serving insects to our chickens and our fish, and that'll still have a huge environmental impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was really, really incredible what you were explaining to me, that substituting the amount of corn feed or grain as well as soy. I mean, whether you're a vegetarian, vegan, or carnivore, whatever, that, the amount of impact that those things have on the planet. We're talking, sustainability-wise. Factory farming isn't just with meats. It's with a lot of vegetables. And the amount that we produce, I mean, you think about the corn that we produce, isn't really even edible in Iowa or Nebraska, wherever it's farmed, and it's just used for, different bio-valuable purposes. I know like gasoline and ethanol is one thing for it, so, and it doesn't even work as good as gasoline, but we create it, and it's like, nope, that's just how we do it. It's there. Let's put a few $1 billion towards it. And you think about soybeans are literally causing destruction of the rainforest. It's not just all the cattle grazing and wiping out the trees and the forest and pushing more into it, but creating these soybean farms, because we need to be making all these soybeans for whatever purposes, whether it's going to be an oil or whether it's going to be for the, umami? Was it the dumb little things that people eat? Edamame?
Edamame.
Yeah, that's soy, right?
I think so.
Is that snow peas or soybeans?
Oh, I'm going to look real
Let's
dumb
just
now.
say it's soybeans, and it's just the dumbest hors d'oeuvre or appetizer.
I love edamame.
It's dumb. It's a waste. It does nothing for a dish. It just no good taste.
Okay.
I think soy is terrible for people. I think it's terrible for people's endocrine systems. I think it does devastation to women's endocrine systems in terms of really enhancing and heightening their emotions, or enhancing and heightening their levels of whether it's going to be their estrogen levels, and too much soy is going to jack up those things. I've seen women just start crying. Just like, well,
Fascinating.
what did you drink today? And just, well, I had a soy in my latte. Just like, how much soy did you drink in there? Well, a little bit. You think about it when a latte is made and how much milk goes into that, and how much more milk than coffee. You're just like, oh God, you're just doing it to yourself.
I'm going to withhold judgment on that one until I look into it a little more. But I agree. Soy is, not the best thing we've done with our agriculture system. Anything at scale, though, has negative externalities that we don't plan for. And we need to be more mindful of that and start creating efficient local systems with better logistical planning from the get-go.
How is that whole process going with getting the feed, getting more bug feed to that? And especially if it's more nutritious, again, you want to create a culture, you want to create a community around people saying, because you can say, okay, I order the corn feed, I don't even think about it, but how do you get people on board with the bug feed? And, because we're thinking about farmers, middle America, who's talking to them? Are you talking to them? How do you get them excited about this?
Yeah, so that is what I'm most excited about right now, actually, is the progress happening on the insects for feed part. In France, a company called Y-Insect just closed a $125 million Series C, which broke records in the EU for any ag tech raise, which was super cool. They have partnered with a big trout company, and they're creating...
What kind of company? Say Trump?
Trout.
Oh, trout. A Trump company.
No, trout. And they have, it's a weird issue right now because it doesn't make sense on first glance, but there's not enough bugs, and we're trying to scale up to fill bigger purchase orders. So right now, given the global the increasing middle class, there's an increasing demand for protein. We can't fill that, so fish companies are under demand. Fish feed is really difficult. There's a bunch of contaminants.
Yeah,
it's
factory
not sustainable.
fish farming is really tough because
Horrible right now.
There's not really much water that gets to filter out in this little man-made pond, unless there was this really great one in Colombia. They have a lot of just little man-made dug up little ponds and a lot of trout farms. However, what they do is it's kind of like a waterfall cascade. So the water continuously flows down from pool to pool. Might not be great for the fishes in the last few pools, but unless it's just flowing and it constantly gets to circulate and clean out. But it was really cool how many people actually had those trout farms like that. And again, just watching that one simple filtration process of the water flowing downhill.
Yeah, and we need more attention to fish farming and a bunch of the inputs and the controls for them. Long story short, we are struggling to hit 1% to 2% inclusion ratio in fish meal. So taking normal fish meal and then making 2% of that bugs. So if we're able to do that slowly but surely for fish, for chickens.
What else goes into the fish or chicken meal? Would that be grains and all the stuff that's already there, like corn and all the stuff that is? So you're just trying to get 1% to 2% of this 100% little pellet that's going to go in the pond to be made of bugs?
Yeah.
That's how slowly you have to move?
Yeah.
In terms of saying, hey, let's make this whole thing a bug pellet because...
There's not enough bug farms in the world.
Okay, so your thing's more of like
We're
just
scaling.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like a major chicken and egg issue where you want the money to build the bigger bug factories, but there's no precedent for having orders for the bigger bug factories.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a bit of a ways to go, but we're making great progress.
Sure.
We're having regulations change like every other month, it seems, and it's really, really exciting to watch.
I mean, the thing to get people on board is to say, how can you make them money? How can you save them money? And people really, really buy in to that avenue and aspect. Even if it's something that, like you said, it's bugs. Why would I get involved with this? How do you create, again, we're talking about creating a whole different, we want to call it, just sector of the economy, like, okay, or even sector of agriculture. Like, we need people to start farming bugs. What does that look like? Hey, here's a cricket, plant it. It doesn't work that way. Or, hey, here's a cow. Well, the cow needs however many months, let's say it's 3, to go through its pregnancy cycle. Do we call cows when they get pregnant?
Gestation period?
Pregnancy? What's it called?
Gestation period?
God, it's a good thing someone knows that word. That could have been bad. Gestation period. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
And that takes 3 months. So we're thinking maybe 1 cow in 3 months. But, with bugs, it's what? Hundreds of eggs, thousands of eggs in some cases.
A lot of bugs.
A lot of bugs. And the gestation period's what? I'm sure a few days or maybe a month.
The life cycle of a cricket, it'll hit like sexual maturity like 5 to 6 weeks.
Wow.
8 weeks full life cycle maybe. We're continually improving upon this though. So for like a black soldier fly larva, it can do 8 to 20 days.
Black soldier fly. Wow.
Those ones are like the most fascinating insect. They're just too gross to talk
Go
about.
on. Tell us.
So people aren't going to eat them because they're maggots, really. But they are so dang cool. They have amazing health outcomes for chickens. They have like super high calcium content, so the chicken eggs do a lot better. They're also enzymatic eaters, so they don't spread disease at all. So they don't have mouths, and they like sit in the food or the feed meal, and they kind of like digest it by exerting, like putting enzymes into it, like basically puking and like absorbing. But they have antimicrobial and antipathogenic properties. So when you're feeding these to chickens or other animals, you're not worried about the transmission of disease upward in the food chain. Mm-hmm. They can also be used to sterilize massive systems. So thinking at India, they have like a big infusion of capital trying to address the sanitation issues, especially around latrines. BSFL, black soldier fly larva. They can devour human waste, animal waste, and then turn it into clean, high-value protein, which is so cool. Like, yeah, there's a lot of really fun things you can do.
Whoa. Black BSFL, right?
Yeah.
Black soldier fly larva.
So pretty gross. They smell pretty bad, but that's like the future of waste to value.
Now, are any of these bugs... yeah, I'm sure there's bugs that are native to certain areas, and they can be places like, you think of the term African killer bees, and there's African killer bees in the U.S. now. I remember that was like the thing that you would see as a kid. Quick pause for claw. African killer bees are in Mexico. They're here. They're coming. But these things never actually harm anybody or harm anything. And is there any bug that, because they've definitely been invasive before, but is there a problem with farming a certain bug because oh wow, this thing has so much nutrition or nutrients, we need to start making this one right here? Is there one that you're no, we gotta keep this one in its country or in its state? And it's yeah.
I'm sure there's a ton. There's still so much research that is needed for this industry. I know there are things like palm weevil larva or the sago grub, which you've tried. It's like that bigger one. Those are an invasive species to the States, so you can't buy them alive over here, but you can buy them dried and all that good stuff. So I think that there's probably going to be an increasing amount of import-export rules around live species. Mm-hmm. I couldn't tell you if there are issues today with that, though. Yeah, I don't think so. But I do know that another big issue we do have is nobody's ever just put like 10 million crickets into the same building together before. Like nobody knows how to scale insects. And
Well, bugs can get out. I mean, it's not like, my room, like if a centipede shows up, it's like, well, I didn't put it there. It just got there, crawled
Magic.
in. That's something, well, let's not jump the gun on that. But, yeah, that thing's going to crawl in. It's going to get in places because, we can't perfect, how we're going to prevent something from getting out. So like you said, 10 million crickets get out though. I mean, that's a problem. It's not like, we don't have 10 million cows in one place, but if you have 10 million crickets and then just 1 million get out, I mean, that might do detriment to a local ecosystem.
Yeah. So
I mean, don't we call that what is it called? When they turn into locust and plague.
Yeah.
We haven't had a good plague in a while. We're due for a plague.
Las Vegas just had a plague of locusts. And I was like, that's a lot of protein, But
how do you stop a plague?
you eat it. No, I don't know.
Seriously, could you?
Yeah, you could get massive nets or an attractive food source or a beacon and like attract them all. The issue with that
Light, just like those zappers?
kind of.
How do you feel about the zappers?
I mean, okay, so we were talking about PETA and veganism before. The one thing I have to say is like, where were the complaints when bug zappers were invented, or when houses get fumigated, or when pest control gets used? Like, that is the worst way to die, in my opinion, getting asphyxiated by a biocontaminant or a poison. And
Concentration camp level stuff right there.
nobody's ever complained about that murdering of thousands of insects,
Pest control, the Adolf Hitlers
Oh my
of
God.
bugs. Wow. What a comparison.
Well, your words, not mine, but...
I mean, I'm not calling them that. I'm just, creating an idea and just shooting it out to the world right now.
Yeah, so, on that note...
I got to find out how PETA or vegans actually feel about fumigation.
Yeah, I mean, my hope is to kind of just walk the straight and narrow as much as possible and not draw attention from...
It's all about energy. If you're actually not going out and you're, trying to portray, a positive, strong, solid message, no one's going to be messing with you.
Thank you for that
It
word of
doesn't
advice.
Trust me.
Yeah.
Things I say, the claws
Ironclad.
the last claw in Los Angeles. How's your claw?
It's great. It's wonderful.
Ah.
Baby grapefruit. Or ruby. Ruby grapefruit.
No, I'm not. I wasn't getting upset about that. I'm just like
Okay.
really enjoying this claw because when the next claw is going to happen, there's like a plague for claws right now.
Does the prophecy foretell of when the claws will be returned?
We're gonna have to pull like a sword out of a stone or something because that's the only way we're gonna know if the claws are returning.
Well, maybe the next event I do will be a claw and bug pairing where we get different grasshopper salts and, blended up mealworms and ants and put them with their best claw flavor.
I know it's that's one of the big things you do. Is, I wouldn't say, is it strictly wine or do you different alcohol pairings with the
We've
bugs?
done beer, we've done scotch,
Okay.
and wine.
All right. Which bugs go with which alcohol?
So with a cricket or mealworm or something else that's a little bit more on the mushroom, a little umami, kind of like nutty flavor, you're going to want to go with a very neutral, soft, kind of medium-bodied red. So think Pinot Noir, very muted, very balanced, nothing too exciting there. I'm going to back up a minute, though, because I'll always start the pairings off with a gateway bug. So something like the chips.
Gateway bug.
Yeah. It gets people into it. And then it lets them know this is going to be a dad humor type event. So they have to be prepared. So we'll do like a chirps chip.
Yeah, you're pretty good at the puns. I've read your blog. I mean, the puns are good.
Thank you.
Bug puns.
Thank you.
Big fan.
Me too. We'll do like a chip or protein bar, something like that. And then we'll pair that with a bubbly because it's like a party to celebrate we're starting it. And also technically, if you have a bubbly drink, the bubbles lift the oils off of products and you can get to the flavor a little bit more. Then we'll go in through some light reds. It's kind of hard to balance because you go from light to dark with wines when you're doing a wine pairing. but that doesn't always match up with the bug order, and I'm trying to like get people up to the bigger bugs. But anyway, we'll do grasshoppers or something that's like a little bit more flavorful with a cab franc or something that's a little tannin heavy. When we get into the grubs, those are meaty, like the bacon of the bug world. Those will get paired with something that's very full-bodied, kind of like a Zinfandel. If you have something like a scorpion that's a little bit more seafoody, you're going to want that to go with a Sauv Blanc. And if you have something like, ants that have a little bit of an acidic taste, you want those to go with either an acidic white or something peppery, like a peppery Syrah. There you go.
And you've done these with different companies, I mean, businesses, individuals, groups. I mean, are you going to a book club in the Simi Valley, like a bunch of moms and saying, hey, we want to do a bug pairing? Or I think you've even done one of those with like Bill Nye.
Yeah, we didn't do a
Or with
pairing,
Forbes.
but I cooked for him.
Okay.
And Margaret Cho, that was fun.
Wow.
She loved the insects. She was like, no problem. I made them a good scorpion ceviche with who else is Papa Roach. They've eaten a bunch of bugs.
Really?
They were the most scared.
Last resort, Papa Roach?
Yeah. They were one of my first like bigger opportunities, and that was with like Sean Evans on Hot Ones, and that was super fun. And then let's see, I've done it frequently with like different sommeliers from like different vineyards, and they are the most fun to work with because I do not have a refined palate. I'm working on it, but they will be the ones that like give me the flavor words that make it click. Like, oh yeah, this tastes like a big mouthful of concrete, but in a good way. Or like, this bug reminds me of wet leaves fresh after rain, which is like a very apt description for one insect in particular. And like, I was like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, it's cool what they can do with words.
What do you think gives them the whatever experience it is to be able to understand, to be able to express that? Because I think expression is like just such the big trait right there. I mean, like we're talking about the restaurants, these sommeliers, like, what do you think gives them like the ability to do that?
Training, like, I think that the more, I never thought I'd be in the food space. Like, my sister cooks, I don't, but now I do. And it is so dang cool, like how much training goes into this, and like how much consumer psychology and just like understanding and grasp of language and sensory perception, because you need to get, you want to recall a memory or an experience into the flavor description. You want to recall like what's actually happening in your mouth and on your tongue. Like, is it causing salivation? Is it causing like mouth dryness? Like, what is that? And then you want to relate it to just a flavor or a combination of flavors that elicit somewhat of like an emotional response. So like the rainfall one is like really good, or not just, cookies or cinnamon, but mom's Christmas cookies, right? And the way that they're able to create stories and emotions with food, it's like you eat with your eyes and your mouth, but also your ears too.
Yeah, it seems like a good blend of the biggest thing that everybody's moving into is, where the arts or spirituality and science come together. Yeah. It's a way to express and explain, reason, which is, everybody wants a reason. They want a definition, they want an understanding of something. But if you can give them, that unique flair, it's something of what I would call is making it relatable. When you make a story, how do you make this, for somebody here in this country, and how do you make them both see, the significance or the humanity in that? And that's really what those people do.
What better way to bring people together than food?
Who else have you tried food? So you have Bill Nye, Margaret Cho, Papa Roach. How was Bill?
Oh, he was great. I mean, I was a little kind of like, what? At first, because he wasn't at all interested in like talking to me to like learn about bugs. But the reason for that was because he was like, yeah, I already know bugs are the future of food. So anyway, tell me more about this like lab grown meat. So he was hip with it to the point of like just having it down. Like, he didn't need to be convinced at all. He wasn't
hip
interested.
with it.
Yeah. I don't know where that came from.
I think Bill Nye is the most progressive science spokesperson out there.
He's a man. Yeah.
Green New Deal, climate change. I mean, he's taken it to the forefront, and he's taken the brunt of it too. He's been kind of Bill, just don't go on Fox News. Just don't go there. People think a certain way over there. You're not going to convince anybody. You can try. It's not going to look good for him. He didn't look good in that one interview with Tucker Carlson.
Didn't watch it.
Don't. Poor Bill. Poor Bill.
Good boy.
Yeah.
Send him some sympathy bugs or something.
No, he needs sympathy bugs. And, just don't go on there and talk about climate change. Because he looked really bad on the climate change thing.
Wasn't planning on it.
Yeah.
It's a rough time right now for a lot of science. and
What is?
The political climate right now, the fact that science is being called into question based on, I don't know, just politics and personal belief systems, which is so strange to me. Like, that's not the time that I grew up in. But I think that's where also, again, like, it's so important to have role models and Bill Nye types, but also like actors and actresses, like using their platform for good and to support a cause like Meatless Monday, or like just, walking, or, not driving a car
I'm cringing
everywhere.
when you say Meatless Monday.
I'm sorry. That was the first thing that came to mind. You can be carnivore all you want. That's also great too. I take it back. Not really. But yeah, and the point being that it would be a great thing for people to continue the trend of using their platform just to make people more mindful about how they're impacting things.
Completely. I think awareness and, taking on those different perspectives opens people's minds up. I think the issue is that there is, you talked about like what kind of meat was that?
Meatless meat.
The
Kidding.
meatless meat. That's what it is. Have you had that, first of all?
The lab grown meat?
Yeah.
Yes.
And?
I think that it's fascinating. I think the price point's a little ways off, though.
Like anything, any new technology.
Yeah.
It's basically what it is. It's like, hey, we've been able to create this thing and it looks just like ground beef. And it looks just like a cheeseburger, but it's not meat.
Yeah. I know they hate the term lab-grown meat. Sorry, guys, if you're watching this. But, I forgot what they like to call it. The meat that is grown in a lab, that's one thing. But then you have, like, the Impossible and the Beyonds.
What are those made out of?
So they are made from a variety of things, like pea proteins and, like, a bunch of different... They're taking the plant proteins and then just kind of reformulating them into an animal-esque protein. The issue with that, though, that I hope people still understand is that just because it's plant-based doesn't make it healthy for you. It's still processed food. So long as we're like all on the same page about that, then there are some alternatives.
It's interesting you said that because I know, for example, any place that says we serve completely fresh food, it's like, we can't put this in our restaurant because it's still processed. Like, it would go against who we are and our mission statement. I think it was actually Chipotle. They were trying to get the Impossible meat in there, but it's like, we make everything fresh that day, or we're cooking it up right there. If we put this meat in there and you look at the actual ingredients on this processed, the Impossible meat, and it's like, wow, it's a bunch of oil and it's a bunch of hydrogenated different vegetables, all blended and merged together, and it's like, is that healthy right away? Like I said, I think people, again, you think about talking about terrible jumping point or talking points. No, it's not good. It's never going to be good. Like, it's the first of its kind. Enough. Don't be dumb. Is it great? Should we all be eating it now? No. And again, is the price point where it's at? No. But hey, look at it. Maybe don't eat it just yet. Don't try it just yet. It's not a bug. That's why bugs are there. But let's continue to grow on it. Let's continue to build.
Yeah.
And, have you seen the new documentary produced by James Cameron? I don't know if it's out yet, but they made a trailer. And I'm in these carnivore groups, and oh my God, they hate it. James Cameron, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jackie Chan's a producer on it, Chris Paul, but all these 4 people are heavy investors into one of those Impossible Meat companies. So again, is that propaganda? Is that education? Because you're trying to educate people on the subject.
Yeah.
But when you watch the trailer and it's like, I understand creating an education because you have to create the entire culture around what this new thing is on people. And the things don't just happen just, okay, one day it's injected in. Just, it slowly builds on people. Sushi is the greatest example. But, like, I think the dumbest one they did was, well, look at gladiators. Gladiators were, these strong athletes, and they were killing people, for a living. And they were these warriors. And it's like, these were slaves. These were people who, were forced to fight for their lives. They probably weren't fed the best. I think they were fed like paste that was just, mushed up and just in a pallet or a mallet just given to them right there. Not your best example or best case. And
what was their point with the gladiators?
These guys did this not on eating animals,
Interesting.
They were doing this here.
Yeah, here's the thing about humans is like we're so adaptable.
Yeah.
Our systems can eat whatever.
Especially pushed to the extremes.
Yeah.
We find a way. Life, that's the whole term of life. Like, life needs to find a way to survive. And when, there's not 8 billion people, these cells that actually make our decisions in our entire body, and I think it's the idea of probiotics and prebiotics and the amount of little organisms that live inside of us.
The gut microbiome.
There's like 3 billion or 3 trillion of them.
More.
And there you go, even more, which is even more than people, and that's just in one person. So how much of these things are actually making those decisions for you, and how much free will and choice in the matter do you actually have? Or are these things all combining together to say, hey, we know what we need to continue to survive. You are the host. Or how would that be? Would those things be the host? Or the body is the host?
The body is the host. It's like another universe in there. I'm a big
universe,
believer.
but it's almost like a whole...
It's the second brain, for sure.
Yeah, the whole idea of thinking with your gut. You think back, wherever that term came from, whether it was a few hundred years or 1,000 years ago, that humans were able to figure that out and to know that something is actually going on in there. Something is actually happening.
Yeah.
To create and coin that term.
To clarify that, it's not like a brain, but it
might be,
one
though.
Cell thick layer, a permeable membrane between your blood and the gut.
But it might be.
To the extent that I do believe that a lot of our emotional drugs, hormones, they're produced here. So what you're eating will definitely impact if you're happy or sad or anxious or whatever, healthy. And I think having a very diverse gut microbiome is going to be critical.
How do you describe the word health? That's my favorite question to ask somebody in food.
That's so hard.
And medicine.
Health can be described as the absence of illness. I do not have a good definition for you there. I think that we have such a poor understanding of health. We have the propensity to think that neurological, biological, whatever diversity means not healthy. Anything abnormal means not healthy, which is totally false, as diversity is not just great for crops, but for humans too, both in terms of how we think to how our bodies operate. So I think that health is just a holistic stasis of personal, highly individualistic balance. And to get there, we have been overwhelmed in the past, and our doctors and our nutritionists have these silver bullets that are not at all effective on the individual basis, and that we have to be more in tune with what health means for us so that we can reach that state. And it might look different for every person too.
Well, that's the thing. Civilization, we've, created this base level term of what is healthy.
What do you think health is?
What do I think health is? I think that's homeostasis. And I think homeostasis is unique to every individual. Everybody's middle is not the same. And that's the issue that not the issue, but we've done such a great job of, people don't look at the positives of civilization or, central organizations that have, positively contributed to the progressive movement of society in this linear line. We've moved so far in a linear line for so long, it's scary to think when the tumble of civilization happens, because we've only moved linear. It's, markets don't move linear, but, humanity has moved linear, which is scary. Because one bad thing that can happen, because we've had such a good run, whether it's a rock hitting Earth from outer space, whether it's, someone pressing the wrong button in Chernobyl, Ukraine, but doing that and someone not being able to go. And you see that documentary with Chernobyl that's on HBO, the 5-part series?
The documentary?
Would that be considered a documentary? No. No? No. Live action. Live action. Chernobyl. There we go. Have you seen it?
Parts of it.
You didn't finish it?
No, it's not. I don't want to watch that alone. Like, I'm like watching this at night, and it's just not gonna make me have good dreams. So I'm just parsing it out.
Oh yeah, I definitely get your heart jacked and racing. But that's one thing. We have these nuclear power plants all on the planet. As much as I believe nuclear power is probably the best and viable option for people to be using, and it's a lot safer than people actually have knowledge of. But some human pressing the wrong button or having a heart attack and accidentally wiping every button on the board right there. And
yeah.
We're so fortunate and lucky to have all this stuff happen. So back to your thing about health.
Oh boy.
This show's all about tangents. It's like, how do we continue? What's the next step? What's the next move forward to say, okay, we have everybody on this baseline. We're still working to get everybody on this middle ground baseline, but what's the next progression? What's the next step to say, okay, this is what we deem as healthy, but okay, maybe we can change people's cholesterol levels, because telling everybody that a high cholesterol is bad or a marker of 200 is bad is not actually the case. All right, we did a good job. It served its purpose, but that's the hardest thing for us as people or humans. We don't want to, we're good with that. We're comfortable. We're very, 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 we love comfort. And any little thing to invoke change, we hate change so much.
Yeah. We
live in the safest and just smoothest time. When you tell somebody something's not going to be the way it once was.
Oh, you're wrong. Yeah. It's
hey,
ridiculous.
we're gonna eat bugs, and maybe steak or meat's not gonna be around forever.
Oh my God.
And again, I love steak, I love meat, but that might happen. Tomorrow, a certain disease might happen that wipes cows off, or that species of cows off the earth. Yes, I speak in very doomsday scenario advice. These are the things that I think about.
Yeah.
What happens then? Where do we pivot to? Where do we evolve? Where do we roll over into?
Yeah, I think. I too think about the impending apocalypse now. So I think
the second.
Yeah, I feel that not just because I'm involved in the space, but like I truly heartfeltly, that was not a word, but I believe that heartfeltly.
I make up words on this show all the time. Ask Brian. This
Yeah.
brand new words and created every single episode.
It's amazing. The dictionary we published, just like the next swag piece, right?
Mm-hmm. Rule 63 is going to be a great one.
So we have a couple big issues in the world. We need to think more about how what we eat actually impacts us and the world. We become very detached from that. That'll get fixed. Bugs are, helpful. They're very provocative. Great marketing tactic. We need diversity in our crops, and that is coming to crisis level. Like there's maybe a handful of plants that have taken over all of our ecosystems. Like we are killing off crop diversity, and that's going to be a massive issue. And then just general biological diversity, soil health, all of that. So insects also play into that. Surprise, surprise. They're like this huge untapped resource that has impacts like for medicine and for feed and for food. But I think the most important one that we don't talk about is that biological diversity. And so having something injected back into our food and feed systems that can have a good impact on that, I think will be game changing.
Are bugs used as fertilizer in that way?
Yeah. So the really cool part about insects is that they can not just be like less resource intensive, but whereas like plants and animals extract, so we're in an extraction based agricultural system. Instead, we can work in a system that is a closed loop, sustainable, additive agricultural system.
Someone could even say it's even a play on, how else we treat people in our society. We're very selfish, and we're all about extracting and taking things instead of providing value.
Yeah.
And exhibiting value to other people.
These insects, like it's pretty cool how they can work where you're eating the whole bug. There is still insect shells, waste from their molting process. And then there's insect poop. So insect waste is called frass.
They poop?
They poop. Mm-hmm. Crickets.
Do we have any cricket poop? Can I see how big? Like a cricket?
I might have some bug poop, actually.
She has bug poop.
I have to go find that. But I think I have, like a bug.
How big are we
puke.
talking?
It's like tiny. Well, so, but from a cricket farm,
Like, could
you have
that
a
be bug
ton.
poop in my hand right there?
No, likely not.
But would that be the size we're talking about, bug poop right
I
there?
mean, maybe, probably smaller. But like from a farm, you have a sizable amount. And it's called frass. And it's super, super high quality fertilizer. So, boom. Like literally every part of it's
Do
like
we have
useful.
to worry about white nationalists like acquiring a lot of fertilizer and blowing something up? Like,
Oh my God.
We do?
No, I don't know.
Okay, because usually they get fertilizer. Isn't that a thing? Like these white nationalists who want to make explosives, they use like fertilizer. I'm not looking at you because you're white. I was asking. It's like a thing I figured people would know because I think I know that.
That's
Yeah.
Fertilizer and bombs.
Yeah, you
are
can't.
words that are used together.
Yeah, you
but
can't.
that's only-
People who buy a lot of fertilizer get like looped into the terrorist
Well-
watch list because apparently if you buy copious amounts of fertilizer, it can be used for explosives. Or it's one of the main
flammable.
ingredients.
Yeah, they have
Yes.
they have like a lot of nitrogen, I believe it is.
Mhm.
So, yeah, maybe that'll be a risk in the future. But if there's enough frass out in the market for that to happen,
Well, no, we want the frass. The frass is good, but like I said, I mean, we got to be careful about people buying a lot of insect frass.
Yeah, we'll make sure to watch out for that. We'll alert the authorities and have it properly traced.
And that's the watch list.
Yeah, but you know,
We can't build a wall around that, but we can stop them. We can stop. 'em.
they'll like climb and fly over it. These little guys are strong.
Oh yeah.
So
There's this that insects like comparative to their size, the amount of strength that
they're
they have
insane.
is like just like the ratio is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I think that's like it's like of a bug river to get like ridiculous size, like in a Godzilla movie, it would never be able to even walk. But you know the amount of strength that those things have is just incredible. Does that have
Unstoppable.
anything to do with their not their genetic makeup, but I know the exoskeleton. Like even if you step on a bug or you try and kill a bug, they're usually pretty resilient. It's like well, I just use my shoe or my hand, and that thing's still going.
Yeah, I mean they're just fascinating
Let's talk
creatures.
about our bug homicide right now.
So, hanging out with entomologists, which is I'm an entomophagist, someone that eats bugs. I'm not an entomologist, which is somebody that's vastly more knowledgeable than I and infinitely exciting to talk to. Highly recommend you get one on your show.
Mm-hmm.
They know all the things about
Send
all the
me one.
bugs. Oh yeah, I will send you really fun people. But yeah, they will tell you stories about how this insect can scale a wall, fall 10 stories, molt, mate. I don't know. I'm a bad bug storyteller, except for when they're dead. I can tell you what they taste like.
I think one of the most unique things that you do is the way you talk about money, or in terms of zeros, like millions. One of the big things you do is raise money for these companies, and you're both very resourceful, and you understand the business side and the marketing side. You know, where you're testing and pairing all these different bugs on how they taste to bring out to people, and I think that is unique perspective to look at things. You're not looking at zeros, you're not looking at numbers. You're looking more what the farmers or the culture itself needs. Where did you get this background in raising money and in the business side of it? Because I think that's where your forte is and your knowledge is.
Yeah, and that's kind of like
expertise. We'll call it. That's the word I'm looking for.
Oh shucks, thank you.
It's my claw-apocalypse right now, so I'm just thinking about when the next claw I'm gonna have, and probably never again.
So it's just like in the back of your head.
Stop.
That's
in the front.
Well, first, thank you. I think it's nice to kind of poke into that side of the business. It's not the one that ever ends up on Instagram or stuff. It's not as fun to talk about, but it is fun to do. So my background in the business stuff and the fundraising came with my first startup, and through that process. But this is my first time on the raising for venture side of it. And I think that cannabis is an interesting parallel where a lot of people feel like they missed the boat on this booming industry now, because back when it was the right time to get into a space that had companies that are undervalued, undercapitalized, and needed capital at that moment to really scale, it's hard to know without a lot of precedent, how do you look for signs of a healthy company? How do you actually diligence these? How do you evaluate them and also source them? So I've noticed that same gap occurring in the insect industry, and I want to put together different funding vehicles to set precedent and also provide much needed capital to companies at the time they need it most. And in doing so, kind of opened the door for a lot of people that I've spoken to that have said, you know, like my investor committee is full of like 65-year-old white dudes. They're not going to be first movers in the bugs, but I guarantee you, show me a track record, like show me some diligence teams, like show me some successful investments. We will not be the first movers, but we will be the fastest followers you ever met. And so that is beyond motivation enough to like put in the effort myself. You know, I would love to do bug and wine pairings nonstop and just like do fun marketing stuff. But at the same time, like if I want the industry to be big enough to support me, I'm going to put the industry there myself. And so I want to like be a part of the teams that are working to drive capital to these businesses. There are some incredible opportunities out there right now that are raising their seed, pre-seed, Series A, that are doing the pioneering work for mass bug rearing and for claiming the distribution networks for like backyard chicken feed. And these are massive, like $10 billion plus markets. And you never want to do like a top. Anyway, I'm rambling, but it's fun. It's really necessary. And it's a very, very big space compared to what a lot of people are thinking about when they think cricket protein bars.
Mm-hmm. What is the biggest thing, or, I mean, is it money? I know you talked about, or just having enough of the source. You guys just don't have enough bugs.
We don't have enough bugs.
But you said also that 2 billion people eat bugs. Is that knowingly? Because I think there's like a study that a certain amount of bugs like fall into our mouth when we're sleeping.
That's a wives' tale.
Is it?
Yeah.
I was like a study like that was said to me on like a radio show one time, and it just really stuck in the back, that part in the front of the head, you know, the one you play with White Claws.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So that's not a thing, that bugs just
think so.
just fall into your mouth when you're sleeping?
No.
Oh.
I'll double check.
Live too.
I mean, yeah, you can't eat live bugs. Again, only eat farm-raised bugs. Eat bugs that you know what their diets were. Eat bugs raised for human consumption. Otherwise, not good. You don't know. We don't have enough bugs because we need to build bigger bug facilities. The biggest opportunities, I think, are first in insects for feed, insects for pet food, insects for humans. Yes, there's 2 billion people in the world that eat them, but it's often as like part of a cultural dish. Like South Korea has boondoggy.
Wait on your South Korea thing. Let's just elevator music cuts to the cat just hanging there, hanging on the phone line.
I won't do that around your equipment. Are you out of claw?
Huh?
You're out of claw? That's such a myth. You guys are starting that rumor yourselves.
It's not.
You were literally starting that rumor yourselves. We have a whole thing in our fridge.
You have the last case.
Sell it to them.
Do you know how lucky you are? I could literally have my roommates. They would buy that from you.
I'm extremely fortunate.
I mean, they also have, their Trump straws should be coming in soon. So they would be drinking their White Claws with the Trump straw. You know, he raised $1 million.
Did they really buy some?
Absolutely, yeah.
Fascinating.
You can't drink a Truly. Okay, we were talking about South Korea and the bugs.
Yeah, so.
Hold on, let me make a note on here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, of the 2 billion people in the world that eat bugs, it's just not a normal ingredient. It's like boondoggy in South Korea, or it's fried crickets in China, or it's ants in Cambodia, or it's grasshoppers in Oaxaca. So we've yet to see insects themselves become a part of just another ingredient. That'll be fun. But again, I think that even before that happens, like it'd be nice to see us feeding our chickens bugs, better health outcomes, more sustainable.
Well, I mean, they already eat those things. I think, especially
in the wild.
Well, especially chickens. No. I mean, chickens are they're just poachers. I mean, they'll eat anything that's placed out there, and I think bugs is like a big part of their thing. And like, I know this is a problem with vegans who are just feeding like their cats, you know, no meat, and these are. I wouldn't say they're carnivores, but primarily felines have a background of being carnivore. I don't know a lion that's just eating grass. You know, same family. The cat and the lion obviously aren't the same, but you know the same thing goes with chickens. That we're just only feeding this thing grain, and it's not. Well, this thing is, you know, it'll eat and poke that beak at anything and kill it. I mean, worms, grubs, anything it can get its beak on. So I mean, that's the thing. It's already happening. And I think anybody who, is a fan of eating chicken and getting them more even jacked up, instead of injecting all the antibiotics and testosterone or whatever else they do to just, those chicken breasts are just ginormous. You ever seen a chicken breast by itself or taken two and it just put them together and just like, oh my God, like this chicken must have been huge.
I can't say I've done it in that manner.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm putting them up on my chest like this, but still, I mean, two chicken breasts, like, whoa. This thing had to be massive. And I think even like the cases, like, when one of these animal rights organizations gets into these chicken coops, these chickens can't even walk or stand because they've been injected in their breast to make those delicious white meat chicken nuggets that come from a chicken breast. And you're like, oh, wow. Think about the chicken that just got hopped up on steroids for me.
Sucks. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the delicious chicken nuggets I made.
So, I mean, I'm not sure if there's chicken and chicken nuggets. In your chicken nuggets, I'm sure there are, but in other ones.
Oh, yeah. But probably not in a fast food chain.
No. Yeah, so backyard, small chicken farmers, they can feed them whatever. It's actually an unregulated feed market. But for large industrial farming, like insects weren't like illegal to feed until recently. And that's late mad cow era regulation that was only recently updated because people are lobbying like us. Yeah. But we'll see more of that soon. I think that you'd be surprised by the number of people, though, that have an issue eating a fish or a chicken that's eating bugs. Like people be like, ew, I don't want my chicken to be eating bugs. Do you know what your livestock
fish eat a lot of bugs too,
eating?
as well.
Yeah. I think pigs are allowed to eat chicken manure. I'm not sure. I heard something like that. It's
Well,
yeah.
Pigs are great.
They're smart.
I haven't spent enough time with one.
I heard they're more intelligent than dogs.
I hear that. I have not spent enough time with them. I'd love to, and then maybe eat it after. And then we can test its intelligence to its taste.
Okay. You have fun with that.
How psychotic does that sound? Does that sound a little over the top? Like Patrick Bateman right there?
Oh, man.
Or is that Hannibal Lecter more right there?
Oh, God. I don't know.
I mean, at least I have the perspective to think about these things, I mean, who else is going after their food for its intelligence?
I don't know. Unpopular opinion. This is going to sound horrible, maybe.
Go ahead.
I would be extremely curious. Like, let's just say, like, my arm gets cut off in, like, a motorcycle accident. Like, if there were a way to cook that up, I would be down to try that. I'd be curious,
So there's a cannibal tribe in India. I'm really hoping to eat some human meat with them.
I mean,
hopefully we can kill the human, too. I mean, farm to table. I mean, you got to be, where would the people, if you're not going out and eating the meat you catch?
I'm just thinking, like, my own, just, like, taste, just to see what it tastes like. I don't know if I could do that for another person, though. Yeah.
I mean, we do that with animals.
Yeah, I don't know. But people, more gross. Probably.
I don't know. I eat a lot of good stuff. I'd imagine I would taste
We
delicious.
got into cannibalism now.
Yeah. There's no telling where the show's going to go.
Okay.
Would PETA or any of these other, vegan organizations, would they be on board with this move to crickets, or have they been? I mean, I know you talked about the other organization before with, what were those people called that eat bugs?
Ento-vegan?
Ento-vegans.
Mm-hmm.
So we have ento-vegans. Whatever about them. No, they sound like great people. But, is it that this is an animal? It's a part of the animal kingdom in terms of the science and naming and of the species, and so this is a living thing. Can't harm it. What's their deal?
Again, it kind of depends on if they are a health or sustainability vegan. I've seen a lot of vegans be totally okay with the idea of bugs, and logic supports that. That being said, though, if they are vegan for ethical or like more personal, religious-esque reasons, and it comes to killing a life form, totally respect that as well. Again, I ask that maybe some math can be done where like you're killing more bugs in the process of collecting your vegetables than you would if you just ate the amount of bugs that vegetable nutrition equaled. But I understand like the whole intent behind it, and am so respectful of people's personal food choices. Mm-hmm. But why we don't know, like the EU did actually rule that insects can't feel pain and that their central nervous systems are not that of other livestock animals. I have seen studies where tomatoes scream when you cut them off a vine. Like there's a spike in this chemical that is their communication chemical.
Really? Mm-hmm. Go on.
And
Can we
so,
hear more about that?
yeah, I mean, I need to find this report. I like reference it so many times, and I'm 100% sure it exists. But
Sausage party's real.
I mean, all I'm saying is like, it's so hard. One of my favorite authors is Douglas Hofstadter, and he has this book called I Am a Strange Loop, and it talks about levels of consciousness, and it's like, you know, is a baby's life worth more than a 90-year-old woman's because of potential, or is the 90-year-old woman's because there is technically more consciousness there? And there is this vast spectrum between person, cow, fish,
What's the name of this
mosquito. I Am a Strange Loop. It's one of my favorite books.
Reading it.
It's amazing. You would actually love it.
He's probably ordering it on Amazon right now.
He also wrote Golder Esther
Damn
Bach.
it.
He's like a great mathematician, philosopher who addresses like really, really cool theories of mind and like what it means to be an I. At the end of the day, though, like writings like his prove one thing to me, which is that consciousness is complex. Our understanding of who we are and why we're here is complex. Things that relate to that are super emotional, and you're not going to get anywhere if you are just like, I am right, everyone else is wrong. So I think the point here is that we have options. We have a little mystery around where bugs fall. Let's work with that. Mm-hmm. Like, there's probably multiple right answers to that question. I choose to eat them. Other people don't have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people really don't, they fail to either understand or just know that a lot of these animal rights or even diets or some of them are based out of religion. Mm-hmm. Especially, I want to say veganism, but a 7-day Adventist, they're big proponent on not eating any meat at all. And would that be based out of veganism or vegetarianism? I'm not quite sure, but I know. Again, we're talking about, lobbying and promoting. I mean, there is a massive lobbying campaign from the 7-day Adventists or any, vegan or vegetarian agenda. I mean, that carnivore Sean Baker I had on my show, like, he's like just going all in right now. It's like there's this massive agenda. Look at the meat
lobbying, though. It's insane.
It's again like there is a whole meat lobby as well, and advocating and pushing. But again, people fail to continue to look outside themselves. Like, hey, this is not just about me. How can I do that? But how do we find this place for people in society if we say it's supposed to be evolutionary biology and, well, you didn't find the right way to survive or pick the right career or pick the right thing? Do we actually take care of people? Or do we just say, hey, leave them to the wayside and just die out because, you shouldn't have been a coal miner and that you should have knew that industry was going to die? But we don't do that. And that's like social justice. It's social care about the people who live in your country. So that's where we move on from. That's where we push on from. That's where we develop.
Light topics.
I mean, if someone needs to be talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
That's why we're here. But Allie, I think we are going to be signing off. Please tell people where they can learn more about bugs, where they can work with you, and your blogs, socials, and yeah, where they can find you, where they can connect with you.
Awesome. And thank you. So I am at Bugible, Bugible.
That's how you pronounce it. I wasn't sure how to pronounce it.
Not Bugible.
Okay.
It's like bug and edible. So
Bugible.
Yeah, you can find that biggest platforms, Instagram, on Facebook and Twitter sometimes. The blog is bugible.com. But since that was so hard to spell, eatbugsevents.com is where you can find like the events and stuff. My goal is if you want bugs, I will connect you with the people to make that happen, or I will bring bugs to you somehow, somewhere, in some sort of event format, hopefully. And there is nothing I love more than collaborating with like schools or groups or whatever, team building activities. I will get you the insects. We just want to normalize it. And if you're interested in investing in companies or helping them out or joining teams, we have massive workforce development needs. So would love to hook you up with teams or whatnot.
Fantastic. Or content creators, because we did make a video in Allie's kitchen eating and trying some bugs, and They were fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't get some right. We were trying to guess which had bugs in it or didn't have bugs in it, and I botched it. Didn't do well. I was convinced. It was really hard to tell which one had the one in it. But, Allie, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate letting us come into your kitchen, your house, and run this program, run this show. And for getting deep with us in the conversation, and for giving us the last claw in Los Angeles. I hope both of you go home and see how right I am. Because I'm right. These are the last claws. No! But for everybody else not tuning, I'm not going to go on my claw tangent here. Thank you guys for watching the show. And thank you for listening to the show if you're listening to this on the audio version. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. Just like Allie, we need people to watch, we need people to share. It's the best way to support this program. And there's some merch coming out. I'm going to provide links to all that stuff. And you can let people know you're on the bus, or you can let them ask you what Rule 63 is. What is Rule 63? I can't answer that question. So that's it, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And the bus driver. And the bus is out.